Chapter 17:16, What are his origins? These black holes were quite similar to void cracks and seemed to have always existed here, but had gone completely unnoticed. Only when a Star Emperor token was brought close would they reveal themselves. The shape of these holes was also the same as a Star Emperor token. Hovering midair, there were a total of 9 holes, each of which seemed to be subtly connected with the others. These 9 token-shaped holes seemed to be connected, forming an array pattern that was beyond Yang Kai's comprehension. 9 was a significant number, as Yang Yan had once told Yang Kai that she had produced a total of 9 Star Emperor tokens. Yang Yan had refused to elaborate on what kind of mystery there was behind this number. However, it obviously had something to do with this scene. Yang Kai's expression became thoughtful as he gradually connected everything he had seen and heard in the past regarding this matter and began formulating a guess as to what Yang Yan had meant. Shadowed Soul Island was definitely related to Yang Yan. This truth was beyond a shadow of a doubt. Otherwise, there wouldn't be 9 tiny void cracks here in the shape of Star Emperor tokens. Just as Yang Kai was lost in thought, the Star Emperor token that he had recently acquired flew into a specific hole and covered it tightly, not leaving the slightest gap, as if the void crack had been filled or sealed by it. After a moment of contemplation, Yang Kai flipped his wrist and summoned 4 more Star Emperor tokens into his palm. These 4 Star Emperor tokens were obtained by Yang Kai through various chances over the past several dozen years since he entered the star field. One of them was a parting gift from Guizu and had originally still contained one of the Great Emperor's divine abilities. However, during the battle with Luo Hai on Scarlet Wave Star, Yang Kai had unsealed this divine ability and used it to kill his opponent. Although the power within it had been used up, the Star Emperor token remained, and Yang Kai had not discarded it. The second token was obtained by Yang Kai during his first foray into the Flowing Flame Sand Field. The third originally belonged to Yi Ziyun, but was later transferred to Yang Kai. The fourth had been preserved in the main hall of Star Emperor Mountain. Counting the Star Emperor token he obtained today, Yang Kai already had 5 in his possession. Of the remaining 4 pieces, Yang Kai only knew that one belonged to Hengluo Chamber of Commerce while the whereabouts of the other 3 were on mystery. After the 4 Star Emperor tokens were taken out, they began vibrating, trying to escape from Yang Kai's control. Remaining calm, Yang Kai allowed them to leave his hand. Unsurprisingly, these 4 Star Emperor tokens were also drawn towards the void cracks up in the sky and quickly filled in 4 of the 9 slots. In the next moment, the 5 Star Emperor tokens released a burst of light and a mysterious force began spreading out from them, swiftly covering Yang Kai. The Saint Chi which had been stagnant in his meridians seemed to receive a strong impetus and began rapidly circulating through Yang Kai's body. Feeling this nostalgic sensation, Yang Kai could not help taking a deep breath, feeling refreshed. At this moment, Yang Kai also confirmed how the Star Emperor token Ming had in his possession allowed him to use Saint Chi, allowing him to catch Xiaohu off guard. He must have undergone a similar process here. What Yang Kai could not determine was whether Ming originally possessed a Star Emperor token, or if he had accidentally discovered it here. Ming was dead now though, so there was no way to know. Yang Kai stood straight like a spear on the spot, staring towards the floating formation fixedly, sending his senses towards this formation. Yang Kai sensed his consciousness being drawn far away. He faintly noticed that a wider world was behind this thin veil. The vitality and excitement of this world far surpassed that of the star field where he now stood, and there were no doubt far more powerful cultivators and more terrifying heights there as well. Yang Kai's thoughts were immersed in this sensation, and it was some time before he was able to collect himself again. He wanted to see what that world was like, but no matter how hard he tried, he was unable to get a clear picture and could only probe it with his divine sense. It was as if his soul had entered a long channel, one that continued to advance forward without end. Outside the central region, Xiaohu stood with crossed arms as he quietly gazed inwards. He did not know why Yang Kai entered this place, but an entire month had passed since he had. Shadowed Soul Island was now under his complete control and all the cultivators who had betrayed him in the past had been swept away. Those that remained had all pledged loyalty to him. Xiaohu became the island master of Shadowed Soul Island again. On this day, Bang Zhen, Qian Mo, and Shang Ao came together to see Xiaohu. Shang Ao had not died but was instead imprisoned by Ming and had suffered torture. Even without taking Shadowed Heaven pills, Shang Ao was able to display excellent combat strength, so one could only imagine how great his strength would grow after taking Shadowed Heaven pills. With such a powerful potential subordinate, Ming was naturally reluctant to kill ruthlessly. The original plan was to imprison Shang Ao for some time to dampen his resistance and then find a way to force him to submit, but these plans were obviously all for naught. After Ming died, Shang Ao was rescued by Qian Mo. The moment the 3 of them approached, at the perimeter of the central region, Xiao, who was still shouldering the heaven-shaking pillar, and the artifact spirit Liu Yan, who had assumed her enchanting human form, stared towards them vigilantly. Being locked onto by Xiao's and Liu Yan's divine senses, the trio instantly went stiff and did not dare to move. They have no malicious intent. There's no need to be wary of them. Xiaohu's mouth twitched as he quickly cupped his fists. Xiao's eyes rolled slightly but remained in place, still assuming a ready stance, prepared to launch an attack at any time. As for Liu Yan, whose sentience was slightly higher, she simply shot Xiaohu a cold glance before retracting her hostility. Xiaohu could not help feeling somewhat ashamed. He was also one of the greatest masters on the limitless ocean, and after 300 years of struggle on Shadow Soul Island, despite being unable to use Saint Chi, having consumed so so many shadowed heaven pills. Xiaohu firmly believed he was now even stronger than before he came here. However, despite all that, he couldn't even compare to these two subordinates of Yang Kai. Needless to say, the stone giant clearly had astonishing power. Without his Saint Chi, Xiaohu knew that even if there were 10 of him, he wouldn't be able to defeat it. The gorgeous woman's strength was even more exaggerated. The violent fire and thunder attribute energy which flowed through her body gave Xiaohu even more pressure than the stone giant. Facing this woman, Xiaohu felt as if he was facing an Origin King, though he did not really know how strong an Origin King was. After comforting Xiao and Liu Yan, Xiaohu turned his head to look at Pang Zhen and the others and asked, "What's the matter?" Shang Ao and General Qian Mo wanted to express their gratitude to Sect Master Yang. Pang Zhen replied respectfully, "I understand." Xiaohu nodded before turning to Qian Mo and Shang Ao and flashing a bitter smile. "But I'm afraid you'll have to wait. As you can see, no one can enter this place now. You'll have to wait for Yang Kai to come out on his own." "Then, we'll wait," Shang Ao coldly snorted. After learning that he was able to regain his freedom this time thanks in large part to Yang Kai, Shang Ao wanted to thank him in person. As for Xiaohu, Shang Ao did not take him seriously. There were deep-rooted grudges between Sea Temple and Sea God Palace and they would not be easily resolved overnight. Xiaohu obviously understood this and didn't care about Shang Ao's indifference, instead asking with interest, "By the way, this old master has been busy cleaning up Shadowed Soul Island these days and has not had time to ask carefully. Pang Zhen, who exactly is Yang Kai? What are his origins?" Hearing this question, Shang Ao and Qian Mo also could not help showing some interest. Respect for the strong was universal amongst masters. Qian Mo and Shang Ao were both generals of Sea God Palace and had both strength and status, but when compared to Yang Kai, they both found themselves lacking. Living most of their lives in the deep sea, they knew very little about inland matters, even less than Pang Zhen, so they too were curious about Yang Kai's background. Sect Master Yang is the Sect Master of High Heaven Sect. Pang Zhen thought for a while and replied solemnly, "High Heaven Sect?" Xiaohu frowned slightly. Why hasn't this old master heard of such a sect? Pang Zhen smiled bitterly. Martial uncle disappeared 300 years ago, so naturally he has not heard of High Heaven Sect as it was only established about 15 years ago. 15 years? Its heritage must not be deep then. Xiaohu chuckled softly. But with a sect master like Yang Kai, as long as it is given enough time, it will definitely rise to the level of Heaven Battling Union and Thunder Typhoon Sect. Martial uncle. Pang Zhen looked like he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Thunder Typhoon Sect and Heaven Battling Union have already faded into history. They have been destroyed? Xiaohu's expression filled with shock as he called out in alarm. They were both destroyed by Sect Master Yang's High Heaven Sect. Xiaohu gasped and both Qian Mo and Shang Ao exchanged a shocked glance. Although Qian Mo and Shang Ao did not know much about the current inland situation, they had at least heard of Thunder Typhoon Sect and Heaven Battling Union as these were behemoths that dominated Shadowed Stars inland for thousands of years. Star Emperor Mountain was also destroyed by him. Pang Zhen quickly threw out another shocking piece of information. What? Xiaohu was completely astonished now. Even Star Emperor Mountain was destroyed by him? Yes and no. Most of the masters from Star Emperor Mountain joined High Heaven Sect, so the current High Heaven Sect is considered the strongest sect on Shadowed Star. How does my Sea Temple compare? Xiaohu asked urgently. Inferior in every way. Pang Zhen spoke the truth, but because we and High Heaven Sect are from the limitless ocean and inland respectively, there isn't much intersection between us. Moreover, the headquarters of High Heaven Sect is located inside the Flowing Flame Sand Field, making it absolutely impregnable to outside attack. Xiaohu's jaw dropped as his thoughts ground to a halt. He naturally knew about the Flowing Flame Sand Field. After all, it was one of Shadowed Star's 3 great forbidden zones. Normally, no one was able to enter it, yet now he heard High Heaven Sect had actually set up its headquarters inside of it. How was that possible? Not only Xiaohu was dumbfounded, Qian Mo and Shang Ao were also in a state of stunned disbelief. Pang Zhen paused here as he too could understand the shock in the hearts of Xiaohu and the 2 Sea Clan generals. Which master on Shadowed Star would not be shocked when they first learned such news? When this information reached the limitless ocean, Sea Temple's leadership were also completely shocked, and the temple masters all had trouble sleeping and eating for quite some time, lest Yang Kai's ambitions stretch out towards the limitless ocean. However, time showed that Yang Kai had no such plans, and after several years of peace and quiet, the temple masters of Sea Temple gradually relaxed. A few days ago, Yang Kai proposed setting up trade with Sea Temple on Sunrise Island, but the temple masters had not made any response yet, probably because they were uncertain about Yang Kai's intentions. Chapter 1717, Conditions. After a long silence, Xiaohu seemed to gradually digest the information, then asked about Yang Kai's background more carefully. Pang Zhen reported everything he knew. Xiaohu's expression became more and more solemn as time passed, while Qian Mo and Shang Ao's expressions also changed constantly, their eyes meeting frequently, as if secretly communicating with one another. Suddenly, a change happened in the central region of the island and a figure strolled out. Naturally, it was Yang Kai. Shang Ao, Qian Mo, and Pang Zhen were all stunned for a moment but quickly cupped their fists with Xiaohu smiling slightly and asking, "Did you have any gains?" Yang Kai greeted everyone before recalling Xiao and Liu Yan then nodding, a few. "So you can also use your Saint Chi now?" Xiahou asked in surprise. In the battle against Ming that day, his opponent had suddenly used both his Saint Chi and Shay, which truly frightened Xiahou. After thinking hard about it though, Xiahou could only attribute the cause of this to some secret hidden in the central region. The depths of the central region's mountains was the spot he had described to Yang Kai before, where he had sensed something unusual but was unable to discern what it was. There was clearly some kind of secret hidden there, and perhaps it was related to the reason why Ming was able to use his Saint Chi, but Xiahou was unable to figure it out. Now seeing Yang Kai like this though, and hearing he had some gains, Xiahou was immediately able to make an educated guess. Using Saint Chi isn't an issue. Yang Kai nodded lightly, not as happy as Xiahou imagined he would have been, but quickly adding, I also found a way to leave this place. What? Xiahou exclaimed. Nearby, Bang Zhen and the others also were shocked for a moment before they all wore overjoyed expressions and urgently asked, is that true? Naturally, Yang Kai nodded. I came out to tell you this news actually. If any of you want to go out with me, you should begin preparing now, as I will be leaving in a few days. Sect Master Yang. Pang Zhen looked at Yang Kai eagerly. Dare I ask Sect Master Yang, how many people can you take out to the side? Shang Ao heard Pang Zhen's question and immediately realized the importance of this issue. Taking everyone out won't be an issue. Yang Kai replied, but what? Pang Zhen immediately became nervous. I can take the people from Sea Temple and Sea God Palace out free of charge, but as for the others, please spread the word that if anyone wants to leave this place, they need to help me harvest some Shadowed Heaven Lotus. Pang Zhen was taken aback for a moment but quickly understood and said with a wry smile, Sect Master Yang's plans are quite deep. He could imagine that once this news was spread, the cultivators who had been trapped on Shadowed Soul Island would flood into the sea to look for Shadowed Heaven Lotus, all of which would wind up in Yang Kai's pockets. Yang Kai chuckled and said, I'm just charging a small fee. When do you plan on leaving this place then, Yang Kai? Xiahou asked from the side. 1 month from now, alright. Xiahou nodded. This old master will help you spread the word. As for my Sea Temple's disciples, I will not let you work in vain. After we leave here, Sea Temple will offer you an appropriate thanks. If old Shan insists, then it would be impolite to refuse. Yang Kai laughed. My Sea God Palace will also compensate Sect Master Yang fairly. Shang Ao hurriedly expressed his opinion as well. Yang Kai glanced at him and nodded lightly, not raising any objections. The news that there was a way to leave Shadowed Soul Island spread like the wind, and soon it swept across the entire island. After hearing this news, 9 out of 10 cultivators dismissed it as nonsense, thinking that it was just someone spreading a bad joke. After all, if there was a way to Shadowed Soul Island, none of them would have been trapped here for so many years. Countless cultivators had been trapped on Shadowed Soul Island over the years, many of them with astonishing skills and methods, so there should have been someone over the millennia who had found an exit. But time had proven that Shadowed Soul Island was an inescapable cage, and anyone caught here would die here. Such news suddenly popping up now was incredibly difficult to believe. It was not until Xiahou came forward to guarantee this information that the Shadowed Soul Island cultivators began to believe in it. It was not long before almost every cultivator on Shadowed Soul Island set out in droves to search the nearby waters for Shadowed Heaven Lotus, hoping to earn their passage out of this forsaken place. Shadowed Soul Island became a truly empty island, in the waters tens of thousands of kilometers away from Shadowed Soul Island. Yang Kai rode atop the little dolphin's back as she swam forward, while the Shadowed Soul Island cultivators were scattered about looking for Shadowed Heaven Lotus. Yang Kai did not remain idle. Shadowed Heaven Lotus were such treasures that naturally the more he had the better. As such, the same day Xiahou began spreading the news that a way out had been found, Yang Kai found the little dolphin and left Shadowed Soul Island to search the distant waters, relying on her instincts to find precious Shadowed Heaven Lotus. Yang Kai's gains were significant. The far waters had always been difficult for Shadowed Soul Island cultivators to reach, so there were more Shadowed Heaven Lotus out there. After swallowing hundreds of origin-grade Shadowed Heaven pills, Yang Kai's physique had grown several times stronger than when he first entered Shadowed Soul Island, so the sea beasts that had previously given him some trouble were now powerless before him. Yang Kai and the little dolphin went further and further out, their harvest becoming more and more abundant as time passed. As the deadline he had set approached, Yang Kai had the little dolphin turn back and return to the island. When Yang Kai returned to Shadowed Soul Island again, thousands of cultivators were already waiting for him. Unfortunately, 1 month was not enough time for all the cultivators to harvest enough Shadowed Heaven Lotus to buy their way out. Some people were unlucky and never found any Shadowed Heaven Lotus, so they wore uneasy looks on their faces while they stood waiting, worried Yang Kai would not bring them out with him. After meeting with Xiahou and the others and understanding the situation, Yang Kai asked the cultivators of Sea Temple and Sea God Palace to help him collect the Shadowed Heaven Lotus. The cultivators with Shadowed Heaven Lotus in their hands happily turned them over before walking towards the admitted side with peace of mind, eager to depart. It only took a day to process this matter. The residents of the island were now divided into 2 parts, one that had turned over Shadowed Heaven Lotus and another that had not. The number of cultivators who failed to harvest any Shadowed Heaven Lotus was not large, only 700 or 800. Yang Kai stood in front of these leftover cultivators and saw the anxiety and embarrassment on their faces. Smiling though, he called out loudly, "Don't fear, this Yang will give you a chance. Since you do not have any Shadowed Heaven Lotus, you can redeem your freedom in other methods." Little brother, dare I ask what methods are you proposing? A cultivator who looked quite elderly asked. Everyone also watched Yang Kai hesitantly, worried he would impose some kind of harsh demands on them. Some of you probably come from strong backgrounds or have good status back on Shadowed Star. As such, after leaving here, you can simply have your families or sects pay some compensation for your freedom. If even this is not an option for you, you can serve this Yang as a laborer for 10 years to earn your freedom. As soon as these words were said, The audience went into an uproar. Some cultivators were worried, but most looked quite happy. Yang Kai was correct. Most of these leftover cultivators had powerful families or belonged to strong sects on Shadowed Star, so as long as they were able to leave here, raising some funds would not be a problem. A few materials in exchange for their freedom was a bargain. If they could not raise enough funds though, serving as a laborer also didn't seem to be a big problem. Yang Kai did not seem to be a wicked person, otherwise, he wouldn't have even offered such an option. All he had to do was abandon them here on Shadowed Soul Island and be done with them. 10 years of work and they could regain their freedom. If you are willing, please go to Island Master Sha and leave your soul brand. After you fulfill your end of this agreement, this Yang will return your soul brand to you. Yang Kai shouted again. The next moment, more than half of the 800 or so people remaining rushed towards Shahu's direction while the rest hesitated for a moment before accepting their fate and following their companions to the side. Shahu, who had been informed by Yang Kai in advance, had already ordered the Sea Temple disciples to prepare. After these cultivators flooded up, the Sea Temple disciples began taking out pieces of white spirit jade and having the cultivators engrave their soul brands inside. With these soul brands, anyone could easily control the life or death of these cultivators, so none of them would dare try to ignore today's agreement. Shahu squeezed out of the crowd and came to Yang Kai's side before glancing back over it and saying with a wry smile, "Is Sect Master Yang's High Heaven sect lacking materials?" Yang Kai simply chuckled. "Mosquito meat is also meat." Shahu glanced at him thoughtfully, before grinning knowingly and nodding. He saw through Yang Kai's intentions. Yang Kai clearly wanted to bring all the cultivators of Shadowed Soul Island out of this place. Otherwise, he would not have made such accommodations. Yang Kai did this for two purposes. On the one hand, he was using these cultivators to help him search for Shadowed Heaven Lotus. And on the other hand, he wanted to deal with things in a way that avoided future criticism. The only explanation for this was that he had a way to return to Shadowed Soul Island again after leaving and already considered this place his private property, thus wanting to clear out everyone else from it. Considering all this, Shahu's breathing quickened, without even mentioning the large amount of Shadowed Heaven Lotus that Yang Kai had harvested on Shadowed Soul Island these days. In the future, as long as he wanted to, he would be able to come back here and collect as many as he wanted. It was conceivable that, in time, High Heaven Sect would become a terrifying behemoth. Shahu's thoughts were unreadable to Yang Kai, but he believed that Shahu could vaguely guess his intentions. Of course, Yang Kai did not bother confirming anything as he had the right to dictate terms since he was the only one with the ability to come and go from this place. Yang Kai only cared about securing this place as his own private restricted area. After settling the last remaining 800 or so people, all Shadowed Soul Island's cultivators were prepared to leave. Everyone's eyes now turned to Yang Kai, wondering what method he would use to take them out from this place. A mix of expectation and anxiety appearing on all their faces. Even Shahu was no exception. Although Yang Kai had spoken with complete confidence, and they did not doubt him, nobody could help becoming a bit nervous in the final moment.